to the good facilities of the Christchurch City Council. Sir Mark, welcome to you and your team. We've got about 15 minutes. You can assume that members have read the written submission from Ngāi Tahu, but we're looking forward to hearing what you have to say to us. But the more of that 15 minutes you spend talking to us, the less we'll have to engage with you. So welcome once again, over to you.
Thank you. A kātua hau ki ringo ki te mihi atu ki a koutou, ngā memo o te committee. A mātou mihi aroha ki a koutou mō te haramai I waingunu I a mātou. I runga I tēnei kaupapa whakahirehira. Ki a koutou katoa ka kaui au te whakaaro me te aroha o ngā hapu, ngā runanga o te Pākihi whakateketeka o Waitaha. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, a tēnā rā koutou katoa. Te runanga o Ngāi Tahu welcomed the introduction of the Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Act. This legislation contributed to a step change in Ngāi Tahu's involvement in civic leadership in the local community. From day one of the first earthquake in September 2010, we have been closely involved in the recovery. As we move to the next phase of recovery, regeneration, as signalled in the bill, Ngāi Tahu wants to continue its involvement to provide support to whānau and the community. We note that the local leaders, the strategic partners, Christchurch City Council, Environment Canterbury, Selwyn and Waimakariri District Councils and Te Runanga are strongly committed to continuing to work together. Our submission is the collective response of all of the Papatipu Runanga who hold mana whenua within the Greater Christchurch arena. We are generally in support of the proposed legislation and its direction. In terms of our specific interest, we request that you ensure that the legislation recognise the ongoing treaty responsibilities. This is even more important as we move to local leadership, as the provisions of the Local Government Act 2004 do not place the same obligations on councils that exist with the Crown. For example, when Regenerate Christchurch moves to a council-controlled organisation, Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu would like to ensure that it continues to have a strong governance representation. The proposal to create Regenerate Christchurch is supported. We would like the number of representatives appointed to the board representing Ngāi Tahu interests to be increased to 2. This would better reflect our interest and commitment to the regeneration process. In addition, we would like to be able to make these appointments using our own tribal processes. While the bill includes 1 seat at the governance table on Regenerate Christchurch, the following clauses are worded in such a way that the direction of the organisation is a matter for the Crown and Christchurch City Council. We believe that the wording can be improved to reflect a true partnership approach. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sir Mark. Anyone else want to say anything? Members' questions? Eugenie.
In terms of Ngāi Tahu's request to be responsible for making appointments to the board directly, how does Te Runanga make those appointments or decide on the people? Is it through an elected process through Hui or?
No, it's through a full elected process. We would go through the Papatipu Runanga of the region, calling for nominations. We would put them through a process, any vetting process like any other organisation, and select the best candidate.
Okay. Thank you.
Nook.
Ako toa mua ko toa muri, ko tau tama wahine, ko tau tama tānei. E tu mai rā te toko tānei nui a raki, e tu turu mau ki a whakamaua ka tīna haumi e hui e tāhi e. A tēnā rā koutou o te raka tira.
Tēnā koe whanaunga.
E mihi ati ki a koutou katoa. I really, first of all, it's only at that Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu, the way I see it, is first on the submission list. So I'll make that point first. I think the second part of it is that talking about the makeup of the board. So when we look at it, we're looking at the fact is that particularly is that the makeup with requesting 2 Te Runanga, well not quite Te Runanga, or Ngāi Tahu representatives. Would you see that one, it would be from mana whenua?
Yes.
And the other one?
Tribal authority.
Tribal authority. So I think that's really pertinent.
As you know, all tribes are iwi hapu. Our structure today is that we under the runanga process, but as you know, our hapu are still alive. The hapu of this region is Ngāi Tuahuriri. They are the tangata whenua. They are the mana whenua.
Okay, so to me, just asking the question, and well, that really does reinforce the true partnership with Te Runanga o Ngāi Tahu through mana whenua, and then it continues on with that representation on this new approach with Regenerate.
Yes.
Okay, kia ora.
Paul Fosterbell.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Tēnā koe, tāmaka ko Ngāti Kahu ki whangaroa te iwi.
Kia
Ko
ora.
te ropu nahinara te pāti ko Paul Fosterbell ahau. Nō reira, kia ora, tātou katoa. So Mark, my question comes to advice that we've had that the number of board members was designed to be an odd number to avoid the risk of stalemate. It's probably not Ngāi Tahu's predominant concern. You obviously have your runanga's interest to advance, but how would you foresee dealing with the potential risk of stalemate should an additional member be appointed to the board, and would that involve perhaps a more conciliatory decision-making process rather than an adversarial one?
Ngāi Tahu is well versed in working within collaborative approaches and collaborative processes. We like them. We believe they're good. You bring the community together, you work on it together. I don't see it as an issue. But I will say that collaborative processes take a lot of getting used to if you're not, have not been involved before, but they're the way to go from our perspective.
Thank you.
David Parker.
Kia ora, David.
There's something I didn't quite understand in your submission. 10.6 of the submission says that it's noted in the transition plan, a Christchurch leadership forum involving relevant ministers and the Christchurch mayor and councillors will meet at least once a year to consider issues important to the city. The proposal should in no way override the leadership provided by the strategic partners under the Urban Development Strategy Governance Framework. All members have an interest in the recovery and regeneration of Greater Christchurch. I'm not sure what's meant by that. Is there some process under one of these, under either the bill or other processes that are already running, that has a leadership forum that doesn't involve some of the people who are entitled to participate in other parts of the process? Is that what that means?
Excuse me, let me just read it, please. So we're fully agreeable of the process of the Canterbury leadership coming back to the fore. While we'll be having these meetings with the government on a yearly basis, we don't want that to override the collective approach within this process. Basically saying don't come over with a heavy and start dictating from behind.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Okay, did you have a question, Todd?
Kia ora, Todd.
Good to see you again. In your opening comments, you understandably put a lot of emphasis around the additional representation on the Regeneration Board as an example of ongoing treaty partnership. Is there any other area that you'd like to highlight? I mean, your report's pretty comprehensive, but in addition to that extra seat, where is the other examples that you would like to highlight for us of Ngāi Tahu being in partnership with the city, other city leaders in terms of Regeneration Christchurch, from your perspective?
We have that arrangement now. It's underway. We're working together as a collective. So the three mayors, the chair of ECAN, myself. So we have that process. But unless that's enforced in the legislation, in many ways it's a Clayton's. Because if there's a change of council or if there are a change in other regions, we're right back to square one. So we would like the treaty part in the bill. We will always fight for a full treaty clause, but also we want it enshrined in the legislation that we are part of the leadership processes of this regeneration of the city. Not just to have it noted where we can be removed at the whim if there's an election.
Okay, thank you.
There appear to be no other questions from members, so Sir Mark, can I once again thank you for your leadership and involvement in this process to date. We're looking forward to working with you and the iwi as we go through. Congratulations on being the first submission of the day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora. Now I'd like to call to the table the Mayor of Christchurch City, Her Worship, and members of her team to make the Christchurch City Council submission, please. Your Worship, welcome once again. This is the second time that we've been hosted by you and your council in this fine chamber. Thank you again for that hospitality and the hospitality that extended to the committee. We're looking forward to hearing your submission. We've extended council a few minutes extra in terms of the presentation time. We've got about 25 minutes. Over to you how we use that, but we're looking forward to hearing council submission. You can assume that members have read the written material from council.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Kia ora koutou katoa and welcome back. The Greater Christchurch Regeneration Bill represents the most significant opportunity we have been offered as a city since the Canterbury earthquake sequence began just over 5 years ago. People have been using words like step change and transformation, and that's what this bill represents to us. It's actually quite hard to believe that I'm sitting here at this end of the table as Mayor of Christchurch. Just over 4.5 years ago, I sat where you're sitting and I listened to submitters, which included all of the strategic partners that are described in the bill. There is a world of difference between then and now. For a start, today you have the Mayor and the Chief Executive sitting side by side with the backing of the Council, representing elected members and the organisation. Last time, we had the Deputy Mayor and an in-house council, but there were 4 councillors who turned up because they hadn't had a chance to be involved in the process of developing the submission and responding. Such was the truncated process, 1 day of hearings, but no prior notification and no time for any discussion. Tomorrow, you'll hear from one of those 4 councillors who'll make a submission as an individual. That's local democracy. But as a mayor who sat where you sat and who has been a cabinet minister for over 7 years, I can tell you that it has been an absolute privilege to work with a government, a minister, and probably more importantly, a prime minister, who are committed to the city's regeneration and are willing to try something bold. And this is bold. We're making history with this legislation, and you're part of it. A joint agency to take on the next stage of our journey, hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder. The fact that it was the Prime Minister who came to Christchurch to make this announcement has set the tone for an engagement that represents a sea change from the urgency of 2011. This bill offers the potential for a real legacy, and each one of you can be part of making that history. We haven't had anything like this ever before in New Zealand. The confidence that the Prime Minister has expressed in us has been gratifying, and we will not let him down, and we won't let our city down. My mantra since running independently for the mayoralty has been what's best for Christchurch, not what's best for council, what's best for the government, what's best for Sarah, what's best for CCDU, but what's best for Christchurch. And I've had my mind focused on relationships, building relationships, Waimakariri and Selwyn District Councils, ECAN, Ngāi Tahu, the ministers that we engage with as a city. There was more repair work to do in this city than broken pipes and broken roads. But it hasn't been easy, but I have to say that in response, our city deserves a legacy. And this bill offers us more than a statutory agency called Regenerate Christchurch. It offers our whole city real hope for the future, so please support it. I'm going to hand over to the Chief Executive, who'll provide a quick synopsis of why the Crown now can have confidence in the Council, and then I'll come back and just touch on one particular aspect of the submission that I would really like to emphasise today.
Thank you. Dr. Edwards.
Thank you. So in October 2013, the city had a brand new council come into office, and I joined the council about 8 months later. We have a very different organisation today than we had back then. And so just on touch on some of those things, we've addressed our financial issues. We fully understand our financial situation, and councillors have made prudent financial decisions, including redeploying our resources. For example, recently council has announced the sale of one of our trading organisations, ChCh, to realise the capital and to reinvest it in our city. We've driven efficiencies across and throughout our organisation, and we will save $40 million in operating costs over the next 3 years. And we have the confidence of some of our key financial stakeholders, our auditors around our long-term financial plan, and just last week Standard & Poor's improved our credit rating and outlook because of the decisions made by council. We've also restructured our organisation to better respond to a regeneration phase. We have clearer lines of accountability, we've streamlined and joined up planning and delivery, and we're a can-do organisation. We've totally changed the way that we operate, and we've shifted the culture of the organisation to being citizen and community focused, to being service orientated, open and transparent, and we make decisions based on what's best for the people of Christchurch. We're passionate about our local communities determining their own destiny and are committed to real engagement and public participation. We're also both a city and an organisation on the move. For example, we've regained accreditation for building consents and now arguably lead New Zealand in these services. We have staff seconded to MB to partner on designing guidelines and standards, as an example. We have a one-stop shop for all consenting and licensing and much more joined-up approach to all applicants. We've reopened many community facilities over the year, and including a new library, service centre and pool hub in Hallsville just last week. The first flight by China Southern into Christchurch next week will open up new visitors for Christchurch and new frontiers for Christchurch people. The tender on our central library closed 2 days ago and will be awarded in the new year. Our world-class art gallery reopens next week, and the town hall repairs are well underway. And yesterday at our council meeting, we released 5 announcements on major decisions, such as our Eastern Sport and Recreation Centre. We're a city on the move, and everywhere you look outside, things are happening. And our organisation is already leading the city through those changes. So we're ready to lead the city through the next phase of our history. We've also formed strong relationships and productive relationships with central agencies, and our staff have been working really closely with Sarah on the Regenerate Christchurch, and we're aligned on many, many things. So what I'd like to formally ask is that our officials continue to work together with your officials and your advisors on finalising the technical details of Regenerate Christchurch so that the people of Christchurch get the best possible outcomes for our city. So we're ready and willing.
Thank you. And I just wanted to end with just a comment on what we think could actually resolve things. And reading the submission, you could be forgiven for thinking that perhaps we weren't that keen on elements of the bill. But as we said, we think that the fault lies with using an amendment process to the existing legislation, which was designed under urgency, under extreme pressure. And I think that's where the fundamental flaws arise from, but there is an easy fix, and so we've come up with a solution. And if you actually look at an appendix in our submission, we actually drew a picture of the process of designing a regeneration plan. And when we produced that, it immediately showed what the flaws were, because you could have basically the minister proposing a regeneration plan, deciding whether there should be one, and then finally signing off on one. So, I mean, in fact, there was a considerable risk to the minister in terms of the structure that had been developed. And I don't think it was anyone's fault, it just didn't have the benefit of sufficient time to work things through. And so what we have done is we've developed an alternative process, an alternative chart, and this might look challenging in terms of the number of boxes there, but actually what it does is it puts Regenerate Christchurch up front and centre. It strengthens its role, makes it crystal clear that in the areas where it operates, within the 4 avenues, within the residential red zone, and within New Brighton, and indeed any other area that is subsequently added by way of order and council, Regenerate Christchurch leads the way. And I think that this is such a fundamentally different approach that this is what would leave a wonderful legacy. I believe that the Crown and the Council's objectives are met with this structure, and a lot of the detail that we put, which was kind of a just in case this, what if they decide this, what if they decide that, in Part B, a lot of that simply falls away. And what I would offer to do is to come back with a supplementary submission that actually resolves all of those issues the week of the 11th of January, if there was an ability to go down this track, because I think this solves all of our problems. We think that the policy intent of this bill is widely supported by both the Crown and the Council. The key challenge is now to get the bill to accurately reflect the policy intent. We think we've got an idea around strengthening the Regenerate Christchurch mandate so that its leadership role is properly reflected in the legislation, and more importantly, the Christchurch community can have confidence that we're on our way. So it's about building momentum, but it's also about retaining confidence, and both of those things can be achieved with some small changes to the bill.
Your Worship, Dr. Edwards, thank you. Now, members, are there questions? And just before we take questions, I don't think for a minute that there would be any objection from around the committee table to adopt paragraph 17.15 of your submission, which asks for permission for continued discussion between our officials, committee officials and so forth. I can't imagine there would be an objection, is there, members? No. So we're happy to do that instantly. Now, are there questions, members? David.
Yes, I'm just comparing the two structures, and I probably should have my head around this better than I already do. But is the essential change that Regenerate Christchurch is which includes representatives of the Crown, is the body that decides whether the proposals that have come forward for a regeneration plan from proponents, they do the work as to whether that should, whether that plan preparation should continue, make a recommendation to the Minister, and the Minister adopts or declines the recommendation, rather than the Minister making the decision as to whether the regeneration plan is, or doing that analytical work, if you like.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the Regenerate Christchurch has two functions, and once we actually got our head around the two functions and split them down the middle, you can see that it already has the statutory mandate to develop regeneration plans for the Central City, Residential Red Zone and New Brighton. So there's absolutely no reason for the Minister to be engaged in that front end of the process.
Yeah.
But when it comes over the other side of the table, it has a reviewing and an assessing and analysing process against agreed criteria and the purposes of the Act. Yeah. And also to take into account the views of strategic partners. And so when you come down the left-hand side, you can see that the Minister is advised of the proposal. We've got in there seeks ministerial approval. It probably is more in the way of advice as to whether there is a belief that the threshold has been met. Because in those on the right-hand side, Central City, Residential Red Zone, New Brighton, the statutory decision has already been made. There are areas where regeneration plans need to proceed. Yeah. In the other areas, there may be a proposal come up, and you can think of many areas. We've got suburban master plans, for example, in Sydenham. There's a lot of interest in whether Sydenham needs something a little bit more to lift it up, to get it across the line. The Woolston area is another example where you've got a combination of residential, you've got new developments, you've got old industrial as well. And how do you look to the regeneration opportunities there? Does it need a statutory plan? And it may not. It may be that the regeneration occurs naturally, or that it occurs because there could be a statutory plan put in place. You may not need to go that far. So Regenerate Christchurch plays a pivotal role On the right-hand side of the line, it is the leader. It decides who develops the plan, who leads the engagement process. It decides the nature of the engagement process. In some instances, it will have to be more formal than in others. So I think that what we've come up with here is a model that that gives us an opportunity to get a new way of doing regeneration planning or urban development in New Zealand. It's got that potential.
Yes, Todd's got us up and then Eugene.
I just want to explore your answer. Yeah, good morning, Worship.
Morning.
Further, in your previous answer, you said that you don't see any reason for the Minister to be involved in the draft proposal. And I'm clearly looking at the current framework as distinct from your blue box option.
Yep.
You're quite right. The Minister is involved, arguably, at the sort of key steps on the journey, including at the front end where plans are being, initial ideas are being crystallised. So you don't think that's a good idea?
No, well, it's not necessary.
Why?
The idea is that Regenerate Christchurch is the statutory body that provides that leadership in terms of, whether a plan is necessary or not. But there is a check-in point with the Minister when the proposal has come from us, if the proposal has come from Ngāi Tahu, if it's come from ECAN, or indeed from the Minister, him or herself. So, and in that regard, there is a need to seek the views of the Christchurch City Council, because we're talking about two different areas. And actually, you've reminded me of something that perhaps isn't clear when you look at the bill the way that it is at the moment. There is a difference between Christchurch City boundaries and the rest of Greater Christchurch. And I think that probably was missing from the previous submission as well, is that Regenerate Christchurch is only for Christchurch City. So Waimakariri District Council and Selwyn District Council do not use Regenerate Christchurch.
No. Sorry, look, it had actually called Eugenie, but I'll come back.
Good morning, Dr. Edwards. In terms of the submission, you are proposing, or the Council's proposing, quite different purposes, which make it quite clear that the Crown's ongoing role will reduce and require local participation as being essential, whereas the bill's only about enabling, and get rid of things like enabling a focused and expedited regeneration process. Is that examples of what you were saying, that the bill at the moment continues too much of that, the SERA legislation?
We would want to review the Part B of our submission in light of further work being done on this model, because a lot of what we put in there was about protecting against the multiple layers of inputs that excluded the Christchurch City Council, or just treated the city as somehow a stakeholder or a status that was less than a joint partner. I mean, we use the word strategic partner, but we don't actually necessarily mean the partnership model that Regenerate Christchurch represents. And so, because the way the bill was drafted was based on the old Canterbury Earthquake Recovery Act, it actually failed to accept that in the Christchurch City boundaries, the relationship is different. And Regenerate Christchurch, I mean, the announcement of Andre Lovett as the chair, I have not had anything but absolute praise for the quality of that decision, and it was a joint decision. I just think that we're on a roll here. We've got a real opportunity to make something really different, and I don't really want to hook into the wording of our original submission, which was an all-bases submission, just in case.
Though we are hearing a lot of other submissions later on which are calling for similar things as the City Council's put in its original submission about a greater emphasis on local participation in decision making. So
yeah. And we do see local participation and decision making as being generated by Regenerate Christchurch. We really do. It's a local organisation jointly appointed, and I know that people would like to see it transfer, to the council perhaps more quickly than is catered for in the bill. If we get this model right, I believe that it can come to local ownership much more quickly than the bill allows. But if we also get it right, then I think in the future we will see this as the model that could be leading the recovery right from the outset in a post-disaster environment.
So aren't the purposes in the legislation quite critical to that, because all of the powers are exercised under the purpose? So getting this right, and what you've put in your original submission, seems to be the framework for the entity that you've described and how it will operate.
Yeah, that is true, but I'd rather do some more work on that in terms of a supplementary submission. But it's one of the reasons why I've also given you a copy of this. This was just released this week. Resilient New Zealand has been a combination of Becca, BNZ, IAG, New Zealand Red Cross and Vodafone. And what they've done is they've done an analysis of the role of business in recovery. And they actually describe a model of engaging right from the outset as a joint relationship between the Crown and the local authority. This Regenerate Christchurch could be a model for how we do recovery in the future. Rather than putting a government department in the middle of a city in a post-disaster environment, and depoliticising the entire process by having a board that's jointly appointed, and maybe over a period of time transitioning the government out of that role. In actual fact, you wouldn't be here doing a second bill if we'd started from the point of a joint approach that transitioned down to across to local government control.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nock.
Look, to me, this is this kind of like alternative plan is about collaboration, more collaboration, kotahitaka. My question is, and obviously it's the first time we've seen it, so has it been, have you gone out and sort of tested it with any of the other sort of partners that you're featuring in here, like Naitahu have?
The issue is that, and again, this is about Regenerate Christchurch, and Regenerate Christchurch only involves the Christchurch City Council's area, and in terms of the inclusion of Naitahu on the board, that was something that the Minister raised with us, and we agreed that that should happen. So in the original proposal, it was just the Christchurch City Council and the Crown that appointed to the board, and we had the Minister would appoint for the first period and then we would appoint for the next. We agreed right from the outset that we would jointly appoint the chair, and then we would have the chairs of Development Christchurch Limited, the chair of Crown Co, and then our other appointments, and then Naitahu was added as one of the Crown appointments. And I mean, we were absolutely comfortable with that. That's what created the number of people on the board. But the other thing is that you've just got to, you think of that triumvirate, I call it the triumvirate, of Regenerate Christchurch over the top. This is in Christchurch City. And then you've got Crown Co focused on the delivery of anchor projects that the Crown are leading. And you've got Development Christchurch front-face investment opportunities for the city. I just think it's a great model. I really do.
Okay.
Matt.
Thank you very much. Just picking up specifically the recommendation about excluding Hagley Park. What was your thoughts about that and your concerns, I suppose?
Well, there is no reason for it to be included in the CBD. I mean, we all think of the 4 avenues when we think of the CBD. In terms of regeneration plans, I wouldn't want to send a message that we were going to do anything in Hagley Park. I mean, you'd like to take it on, wouldn't you? I mean, yeah, Ron Guthrie did many years ago. There was an anchor project that was included in it, and that was the Hagley Oval. which is now up and running. There's no reason for it to be included anymore.
Joe?
Dr. Edwards. My question is around, and I'm not sure whether you'll be able to answer it, but in your submission you talk about the long period of regeneration for Christchurch. You're looking out to the future. Do you have an idea of how long that future is going to take? And as part of that, part of that future is, where you would see, as you said, where the government would slowly back away and you take over? Because we've had a number of submissions that allude to that as well.
Yeah, I think that it's almost impossible to put a period of time on it. But if we get this model right, then it isn't just a post-disaster regeneration model. It's actually an urban development for urban decay model as well. And there are cities throughout the United States that have had periods of decay. I met the mayor of Pittsburgh a while back, and he stood up and he said the city of Pittsburgh died in 1970. It's now the most exciting and vibrant and wonderful place to be. So how do you get a city that has suffered as a result of a disaster or has experienced urban decay? How do you regenerate in that environment? And we do have a planning environment which can be enormously challenging to actually bringing about the sorts of changes that you want to achieve in a relatively short period of time. And I always use the example of something called Plan Change 48, which was introducing flood management areas in Christchurch. The process began in 2005. The plan change was due to become operational in September 2010. 5 years to bring in flood management areas, which were floor levels, to actually protect homes against being flooded. It's just, sometimes you actually need to think, can we do this better? And that's why I say this is a regeneration model, quite different from a recovery model. But if we started at the beginning, the recovery, with a joint government council approach right from the get-go, then we would be moving into regeneration as a natural flow from where we were.
Yeah, David Parker.
Yeah, I think most people around the table here would agree that it takes too long to make plans. It's a really interesting example that you gave in respect of the obvious need to have an appropriate rule to stop flooding of new houses, particularly when they're built. Would you be able to provide us with you or your staff with an analysis as to why that took 5 years?
Yeah.
I mean, was that unnecessary?
It was a mixture,
Yeah.
but it wasn't. I always thought that it was multiple appeals and things like that, and people not wanting it. It was that you needed in-depth analysis. I mean, it's interesting, the Parliamentary Commissioner for the Environment has just put out a report on coastal hazards, and she's talked about the need to work empathetically with communities, and we ended up, you can't fast-track coastal hazards, you can't, because you do need to work carefully with communities empathetically, because there are issues and challenges. So we've pulled that out of a fast-track process. So there are things that are not appropriate dealt with in a fast-track way.
Well,
there are things that take time.
I'd quite like to see where you think the excessive time was, and what you think would be an appropriate range of times. Because it seems to me that one of the things that we risk doing here is that we risk giving the council all of the time that it needs, and occasionally councils do make mistakes, and if we allow them all of the time and make the rather brave suggestion that collaborative processes always get to the right outcome, we actually are left wanting to save time by truncating appeal rights. And I'm not sure that's right. I'm uncomfortable with that idea, because I have seen some plans in my lifetime under the RMA that have been terrible and have been fixed by the Environment Court, the Appeal Authority. And so I'd quite like to see your view as to where, how we can take out unnecessary steps, or have decent timeframes getting to an end point within the time period that's needed without truncating those safeguards that come from appeal rights.
Yeah, look, I'm thinking, and we can certainly provide that
Yeah.
information, but I think of New Brighton because, you know, I've represented the area as a Member of Parliament. When I first got elected as the MP for Christchurch East, there was a revitalisation plan, you know, and then there was another one, and then there was another one, and there'd been one before, you know, like, you actually need at some point to have some sort of process whereby you can address these needs. Now, in terms of New Brighton, it's just screaming out for a regeneration plan that has some teeth. You can put all of the plans together, but if you haven't got a mechanism for delivery, then it just won't happen. And that's, to me, is the biggest reason why, you know, I can... But yes, I'm happy to put
I do
together...
take your point on on the need to have some instruments that allow revitalisation of areas that are in decline, whether it's whatever the causes of the population decline, unless there is some... There seems to be a gap in our current law that councils can't take some reasonably bold initiatives.
We lost over 6,000 households that probably would have associated themselves with New Brighton as their local centre. I mean, not for all of their shopping needs or anything like that. People tend to go to malls. But, you know, that's had a huge impact on the area. And with that number of people, you do need to think a little bit more boldly about what can be done. And this is what offers that opportunity.
Your Worship, Dr Edwards, we've run out of time, but can I, on behalf of the committee, thank you both and Council for your very good submission and for your collaborative goodwill approach to this. I'm sure that we will be able to produce a very workable and useful piece of history in this legislation. It's always helpful for the committee if we could maybe have a copy of the introductory remarks that you were both referring to. It's just helpful for us.
Yep.
Kate or Kimberly will be able to sort that out. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.